Quentin Price always got up at dawn to exercise and go for a quick run to stay in shape. The man used to serve in the Special Forces and was accustomed to all the difficulties such a challenging job entailed. Dangerous combat operations, marches in full gear, and much more. He experienced all of the things that give the Special Forces its impeccable reputation. Despite the fact that Quentin retired from the services 10 years ago, he still felt a certain connection to the Special Forces and believed in the importance of mutual assistance. Unfortunately, at the age of 44 years, the former military man was already a widower and was raising his 6-year-old son Bobby alone. Quentin's wife Amanda died 5 years ago under very strange circumstances that had been haunting him ever since. They didn't know each other too long before Amanda's death. They only met after Quentin had already retired, so she never got a chance to be an army wife. After leaving the Special Forces, the man started working on developing his own business, which he felt was the most promising occupation. Quentin got some help from his fellow retirees, but he did most of the work himself. Eventually, his business became very successful. Quentin owned a construction company and provided jobs to at least 300 employees who could always count on good salaries, timely paychecks, and cash bonuses for successful projects. The only thing that haunted Quentin were the thoughts of his dead wife. Amanda was 7 years younger than her husband, and everyone who knew her before their marriage was sure that she married Quentin for his potential. The woman had always loved a luxurious life, and a relationship with Quentin opened up truly limitless possibilities for her. Unfortunately, the Special Forces retiree couldn't have children. Quentin saw many specialists in various hospitals and underwent all kinds of treatment, but nothing worked. It was then that the man suggested that they should adopt. Meanwhile, Amanda didn't see it as necessary, since she wasn't all that eager to have children to begin with. "It's okay, dear. Why do we need someone else if we have each other?" Quentin only shook his head in response. Frankly speaking, he had long dreamed of an heir who would take over his business in due time. Therefore, despite his wife's obvious disapproval, Quentin decided to adopt a child. When the man first saw 1-year-old Bobby, he immediately knew that this particular baby would become his son. Amanda took the boy's appearance in their home rather coldly, but it could have been because maternal instincts in women often only kick in relation to her own child and not to the adopted one. As time went by, Amanda got used to Bobby and started treating him with a lot more warmth than she did in the beginning. But then the woman suddenly died under extremely strange circumstances. It all started with the fact that Amanda went to visit her relatives in Ohio. But before the woman even crossed the state lines, she got into a terrible car accident. Her car rammed the bridge guardrails and fell into the river. Quentin was one of the first ones to learn of what happened. He arrived at the scene just half an hour later. The search lasted for about a day. Divers found Amanda's car almost immediately, but the woman's body was never found. "Sir, I understand what you're feeling, but there's a very strong current here. Do you understand what that means? Your wife's body could have been carried miles away from the crash site. We will continue the search, of course, but I can't guarantee anything," the leader of the search and rescue team explained. After Amanda's death, Quentin felt extremely lost. Left with little Bobby in his care, the former military man was literally torn between family and work, trying to provide his son with everything he needed. Since Amanda's body was never found, Quentin had to bury an empty coffin with some of his deceased wife's possessions. The man understood that miracles didn't happen often. Moreover, if Amanda were alive, she would have certainly gotten in touch with him. In the 5 years that she had been gone, even the most optimistic of her friends accepted the fact that she was dead. Quentin couldn't let another woman into his life, so he decided to direct all of his time and energy to raising his 6-year-old son, Bobby. His business was going mostly well. He even managed to stoically get through the betrayal of his deputy. Floyd disappeared a month after Amanda's death, as if the accident had somewhat affected him as well. Unfortunately, the deputy didn't only betray Quentin during such a difficult time in his life, but also stole part of Quentin's assets. Why would he do that? I can't even imagine doing something like that. Did he want to get rich that badly? After all, we've built this business together. It's plain strange. Quentin said. That was one of the hardest years in Quentin's life. Amanda's death and the betrayal of his deputy and friend shook Quentin to the core and even made him doubt his own strength and capabilities. Back then, the only things that saved the retiree were his remarkable willpower and boundless love for his son, who became his closest person on earth. It was this all-consuming feeling that saved Quentin from seeking solace in the bottle of whiskey, which, as we all know, never helps solve any problems, but sure does create new ones. In the meantime, little Bobby was the pride and joy of his father, who found solace in his amazing son. Since Quentin was born and raised in Iowa, his son had never seen the ocean, which he'd been dreaming of ever since he watched a movie about pirates. "Dad, can we go see the ocean? Even if it's just for one day, please," little Bobby pleaded. "Why not? It's a great idea, son. Where would you like to go? Miami? Los Angeles?" Quentin jumped at the idea. Having given it some thought and weighed all the pros and cons, the man decided to go to the south, to the fertile land of Miami. Gentle sun, hot sands, and beautiful waves, perfect for surfing. What could be better? When Bobby saw the ocean with his own eyes for the first time, he couldn't contain his emotions and joyfully clapped his hands. "This is so cool, Dad. Can I go for a swim?" the little boy asked. "Sure thing, son, but don't forget to put your life jacket on," Quentin replied with a smile. During his service in the Special Forces, the man repeatedly saw the ocean, so he wasn't as excited by it as little Bobby. Soon, having taken a swim in the warm waters of the ocean, the father and son were basking in the gentle sun of the south, drinking cool orange juice. Quentin was planning to stay in Miami for about a week, after which he had to return home. He couldn't leave his business without personal attention for a long time, as it could cost him a lot. If Bobby had it his way, he'd spend all the time in the water, swimming by the shore and relaxing on his mattress float. Having decided to get his son an ice cream cone, he left the boy by the loungers and went to the nearest booth that was selling all kinds of desserts and drinks. It was a rather busy day, so there were at least 12 customers in line by the booth. Lost in his thoughts, Quentin decided against looking for another booth and patiently waited for his turn. Suddenly, he realized that the woman standing in front of him looked very familiar. Quentin experienced a strong feeling of déjà vu, which made him flinch and involuntarily take a couple of steps back. Looking more closely, Quentin was stunned by what he saw. Dear God, it's Amanda. She's just standing here in line to get some ice cream, as if nothing's wrong in her life, flashed through the man's head. Sure, his allegedly deceased wife had gained some weight and changed her hair, but he was certain that it was Amanda. There could be no mistake. Quentin was 100% sure of it. His supposedly dead wife was standing in front of him, completely oblivious to the fact that Quentin was just a few yards away from her. What is this all about? Why did Amanda go to Miami? And why did she fake her own death? Or maybe I'm wrong after all. I could be, I guess. Quentin started to doubt himself. Having decided not to approach the woman just yet, the retiree stepped aside and started watching his late wife's doppelganger. Meanwhile, Amanda bought a couple of scoops of ice cream, then put them in a paper bag and headed towards the nearest residential areas where the buildings overlooked the ocean coast. Where is she going? Does she really live here? Quentin thought, trying to remain unnoticed. Fortunately, following Amanda didn't take long. In just 5 minutes, she led Quentin to a beautiful 2-story house with a swimming pool and a tennis court, located in the backyard of the house. Having memorized the address, Quentin decided to go back to Bobby, as the kid could be getting worried about his father's long absence. Seeing that Quentin returned empty-handed, Bobby pursed his lips in disapproval. "What about the ice cream? You promised." Quentin frowned and said, It's okay, son. We'll buy some on our way back to the hotel. We need to get going. You'll sit in the lobby with the receptionist while I run a quick errand." "But Dad, I don't want to go back to the hotel. The weather, it's so great. There's almost no wind. The ocean is like a mirror," Bobby pleaded. "Don't worry, son. We'll come back to the beach when I'm done, but we need to go right now." There were tears in Bobby's eyes, but there was no changing his father's mind. Quentin needed to uncover the secrets of the house on the coast at all costs. After all, his dead wife Amanda was hiding behind its doors. Having left his son with the receptionist, the retiree went back to the mysterious mansion. The man deliberately tried to calm his nerves and pull himself together before knocking on the door. "Come on, Quentin. What are you waiting for? Come on, just do it." The man rang the doorbell and started listening. Soon he heard the shuffling sound of someone's footsteps, after which the door opened and Amanda appeared before the man wearing a robe. The woman's astonishment was so sincere that she couldn't help herself and let out a little shriek. "Quentin, what are you doing here? How did you find me?" Quentin's face turned purple with anger. "What am I doing here? How do you even have the audacity to ask me that? You left me and Bobby. You faked your own death and fled to Miami. Just tell me one thing. Why?" At that moment, the door of one of the rooms swung open, after which a rude male voice said, "To live with me, Quentin. To be honest, I didn't expect to see you here." As Quentin looked at the man, his forehead got sweaty and a chill ran down his back. The fact was that standing in front of him was none other than his former deputy, Floyd, who disappeared 5 years ago. Only then did the businessman realize what had really happened. His wife Amanda and Floyd had an affair. They stole Quentin's money and ran away to start a new life. The realization of the bitter truth made the man lose his vigilance for a brief moment, which was enough for Floyd to get behind him. Having grabbed a vase from the table, Floyd tried to hit Quentin on the head with it. However, he didn't take one thing into account. Quentin had years of service in the special forces behind him. He had Floyd lying face down on the floor in a matter of seconds. The retiree tied his hands with his belt, after which he took his phone out and called the police. Meanwhile, Amanda just stood there, quietly, unable to believe her eyes. When she and Floyd came up with their scam 5 years ago, she didn't even consider the possibility of such an outcome. Having breathed a sigh of relief, Quentin handed the scammers over to the police and went back to the hotel. They still had a week of oceanside vacation ahead of them, and they were going to make the best of it, enjoying the beauty and warmth of the south of the United States.